Thank you. Thanks, Max. Thanks for having me. It's such an honor to be here. So just to tell you a little bit about myself before I delve into all these cool things that I brought. So I'm a teacher. That's my job during the week. So I'm a Jewish studies teacher at a school, Mount Scopus, not far from here actually in Burwood. So that's my job. I'm there 5 days a week. But this school actually sent me last year in 2022. They sent me to Israel for a year to learn at a seminary at a yeshiva, where I was learning basically rabbinical studies to become a rabbi, and I was learning Talmud and Torah, the Bible. And one of the things, it was a very intense environment, as you can imagine. You know, it was long hours, spent in a very sort of concentrated and intense learning. And one of the things I thought is I always had an interest, and I know obviously you guys are enthusiasts in this way too. I'd always had an interest in handwriting and calligraphy. And one of the things that I always wanted to learn more about was how our sacred text, how the Torah is written, and the actual art of writing it. So I thought, I'm in Israel. This is kind of where the main stuff happens. So I may as well delve into this. So I found a teacher. I actually found him through Instagram, funnily enough. He's a young guy through Instagram. He's a young guy he's a scribe by training, but he actually is what he calls himself like a Jewish scribal artist. So he produces, and I'll show you guys some things like this. He produces these amazing artworks using the ancient Hebrew letters that people buy as art pieces, and he uses all the materials that we use for the Torah when we're writing the Bible. By the way, if there's any words I use that you don't, I know some people are Jewish and some of you are not, which is fine. If there's words that I use that you don't understand, please correct me and I'll jump in and I'll tell you what they mean. Yes. In the ancient letters. So no, in the ancient Torah letters. Yeah. So I'll show you something. This isn't from him, but this is something like what he would do. So this is a Jewish wedding certificate called a ketubah, right? So you can see the ancient Hebrew letters, right? So this is a marriage contract. Effectively, it outlines all the obligations that a man has to his wife. He's got to clothe her. He's got to feed her. All those kind of things. It's a 2,000-year-old document, right? So it's actually, even now, we'd sort of roll our eyes at some of the things that it says, but back then it was actually quite a progressive document saying that if the man doesn't do those things, the woman had the right to divorce him, which, back then was pretty progressive, right? Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, down there. Yes, dear.
Well, no, that's on the back. So those are the kind of things that he would do. Anyway, so I would he was in the old city. He had an amazing office set up in the old city at an ancient synagogue over 500 years old, a beautiful synagogue. And I would go once a week, learn with him, sit with him for a few hours. And I would literally learn the letter Aleph, which is the first letter, and then the letter Bet, which is the second letter, A, B, and C. And each week I would learn how to write each letter in the ancient script, which is different to the modern Hebrew script that we use today. And then I would also learn the laws about how to write each letter. So every letter has to be written in a very exact way. And there's all these Jewish laws that the rabbis made that if you don't write it that way, if you don't write it in that exact way, it's not kosher. So there's, sort of the artistic element of learning how to use a quill, learning how to use the ink and all of that. But then there's also the knowledge of knowing exactly how to write each letter. And if you make a mistake, what you can do and all those kind of things. So anyway, I learned with him for a year like that. We learned a new letter every week. And at the end of my year, I studied all the laws intensely and sat a test with what's called like it's like the software, the scribe council, where they give a certificate, assuming you pass the test, to all scribes who then have like permission to write sacred texts. Yes, people sometimes, like anything, people write without the certificate. But if you have the certificate, everyone knows that you've been approved by this world organization and you're able to write the sacred text. So that's what I did so now almost a year and a half ago. And since then, I've been working with, you mentioned Rabbi Eli Gutnick, who's the main sofer, the main scribe in Melbourne who writes most of the text. And he also checks all the texts to check that they're kosher. A lot of the texts come from Israel. So I work with him, and that's something that I've been doing. I've been writing a scroll of Esther since I've got back, which I brought one tonight, which I'll show you as well. So I'll talk about some of the materials, then I'll talk about what the different things that a scribe does. And please jump in with any questions that you like. So I guess the first thing to talk about is you'll notice that obviously we don't write on paper. We write on parchment. We call it cloth in Hebrew. So parchment, we have to use a special type of parchment. It has to come from a kosher animal. So it can come from any kosher animal. So technically it could come from a chicken, but I don't think the parchment from a chicken would look too good. So generally we use parchment from a cow. It's got the best skin. Parchment has to come from the inside, the outside layer of the inside of the cow. So it has to come from the outside. It can't come like from the actual body itself. The parchment is then stretched, and there's a whole process in that as well. That's actually a special skill that has to be done by a Jewish person. And when they do that, they actually have to recite like a prayer saying, I'm doing this so that this parchment will be used for a sacred text. And then obviously the sofer, myself, comes in, goes to the shop in Israel and buys this parchment, which is pretty expensive. A sheet like this would cost $200, $300. So it's expensive stuff. That's with inflation. It used to be about 100, 150, but everything's gone up, including parchment. So there's a whole process in that. And obviously one of the reasons that we use parchment is that the job of a sofer, the job of a scribe, we believe goes all the way back to Moses, who was we believe was the first scribe. Moses received the Bible, the Torah from God. And when he received the Bible, he was up there for 40 days and 40 nights. He wanted to make sure he got it right. So he wrote it down, right? And as I tell the kids, when I present to the kids, Moses wasn't able to go to Office Works and, buy nice highlighters and textures. So, he had a quill. So we use quills. Obviously that comes again from this tradition of using something that we've been using for thousands of years. The quill for us has to come from a kosher animal. So we generally use like a turkey feather. This is a turkey feather here. I'll pass it around after you guys can see. So this is a cut quill. You can see that we cut. So you cut the quill so we can use it there. Obviously, so it looks like that before it's cut, right? So you can see that it's closed, right? It's specially prepared that we can use it. There's a whole skill in learning how to cut the quill. And obviously we make, depending on how big we want our letters to be, is how big we cut the quill. Do you use quills in some of the things that you do? In this? No, I know, no, I right. What do you
normal sort of production, right, temporary heat,
yeah.
And then you think scrapers.
Yeah.
I take 2 knots of plumb too, and then use that to make the slit.
Yeah.
Then cut back and pull out the what do you call the inside bit? Stuff inside the.
Yeah, I've actually forgotten the name for it. Yeah, but
the
the yucky stuff. Yeah.
Swimming in ink, water down.
Right.
Some of those permanent inks for fountain pens like black and carved black.
Right.
Seems to have enough surface tension to hold on to things.
Right. So yeah, bringing up to ink, which is our next thing, obviously, that we need to use. So this is actually a bottle of kosher ink, right? So what makes this ink kosher is that it can't be from non-kosher animal products. So it can't be squid ink or octopus ink. It's a bit of a secret recipe, right? So they're very reluctant to tell us exactly what they use, but I know that they use gallnut, they use soot, water. It's a whole mixture of things that's produced together. And obviously, we want it to be incredibly clear and black, right? So we can't, also the laws of being a software is that you can't use any ink that's not black. I think the practical reason is, I mean, again, there's a traditional element that's probably what they had a few thousand years ago. They probably weren't making blue and green and pink inks back then. But I think, you know, the main reason, as you guys know, is that black is the best color in terms of fading and longevity. To write a whole Torah scroll, so I've actually got a part of a Torah scroll here. So the Torah is, when I refer to the Torah, I'm talking about the 5 books of Moses, the Old Testament. So this is one piece of parchment from a Torah scroll, right? A Torah scroll is over 60 of these, right? So it's an enormous production. There's 304,000 letters that go in a Torah scroll that all have to be handwritten. So you can see here, this kind of looks like it's printed almost, right? You know, the columns are very exact. So we'll do a bit of show and tell after, but you can see that there's lines that have been scraped. So you're allowed to scrape lines with a knife. We can't draw lines, so we can't use a pencil or something to draw lines, but we can scrape the lines. One thing that it takes a bit of getting used to when you start learning to be a sofer is that you use the lines from the top, not the bottom, like we do, you know, in an exercise book. So you actually use the top of the line to start your letter, and you hang all the letters from the top rather than using the base. So that took a bit to get used to. You'll also notice that obviously all the columns are exact, right? That they all start and finish at the same point. But on the other hand, you've got each line has a different amount of words or letters, right? Not every line is the exact same amount of letters. So there's certain letters, like if you have a look here, this letter is a resh, so that letter can be extended, right? There's certain letters that you can extend or shorten depending on, you know, where you need to finish your line. Yeah.
Does each word have to come exactly on the line?
No, so every word has to come exactly on the line. You can't have any carryover. And one other thing that's important to mention is obviously a big part of being a Jewish scribe is the continuity of making sure that the Torah scroll that you're writing is the exact same Torah scroll that was written, you know, thousands of years ago. So you actually have to, even if I knew the whole Torah by heart, one of the laws is that you actually have to follow a previously written Torah. So when I'm writing, I'm writing on a slanted desk, and on the desk, I have printed the column that I'm writing, and I actually have to copy it, look at it at each letter and copy each letter. And the idea is that there's, you know, little mistakes. I don't know if anyone's been to Israel, into Jerusalem, but, you know, or you might know the famous Dead Sea Scrolls that were found in the Judean hills. So they contain passages from our Torah that, you know, those scrolls are over 2,000 years old, and they're the exact same passages that we have today. So, you know, part of that is that, you know, we're following a script, and you can't just say, oh, yeah, I think it's good enough. I remember what it's like. You have to follow the script exactly. So a Torah scroll, this is I guess the main thing that a sofer does. This takes about a year to write. So if a sofer is writing from 9 to 5, we can't write on the Sabbath, on Shabbat, but 6 days a week, it takes about a year to write. Obviously, some people are quicker than others, but about a year. You know, it costs therefore about $100,000 to produce. You're paying the sofer probably $50,000, and then the rest of the materials, the ink, the parchment, the ornaments that go on the scroll, not on the scroll, but the handles and the covers and all that kind of thing. So it's a very expensive item. It also obviously contains the name of God. So there's all these laws that we write that are about just when we write generally. And then there's sort of extra laws where we're writing the name of God. If you make a mistake when you're writing the name of God, depending on the type of mistake, you actually might have to start again, not the whole scroll, but you might have to start the whole piece of parchment again, which is not something that you want to happen. And like I said before, you also have to have intention in everything you do. So every time before you start writing, you have to say a short prayer saying, I'm writing this with intention that it's going to be a holy Torah scroll. Just a quick story. When I first started writing my book of Esther, I was a column in and I realized that I forgot to say it at the start, which meant that I had to start again. So that was a very upsetting, realization. And I think sort of, is a good way of describing how frustrating it can be to be a Jewish scribe, but also how important the role is, and I guess the honesty of the scribe. Because really, when I'm writing, it's 10 o'clock at night, usually my kids are asleep, no one's looking over my shoulder, no one's watching me, no one knows what I'm doing. Most Jewish people can't tell a mistake from a regular letter. Really, it's on me to say if I've made a mistake and to know what the mistake is and then to fix the mistake. Because really, I'm not writing it for myself. I'm writing it for all the people that are going to read from the scroll and benefit from the scroll, which, if you go to an old synagogue, let's say you go to Caulfield Synagogue, which is a 60-year-old synagogue, there's going to be Torah scrolls in there that are 60 years old, that are still in good condition. We have Torah scrolls, in museums that are hundreds of years old. So there's a reason why they last so long, and obviously so many people benefit from them. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you work very hard, sometimes late at night.
Yeah.
And I think late at night I'm quite tired.
Yeah.
If you make a punctuation mistake, is that the whole sheet gone?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. So it's only really when you're writing God's name.
Right.
And I guess a little fun fact is the reason I started when I got back from Israel with the scroll of Esther is the scroll of Esther doesn't have God's name in it. So it's a little bit of it's actually something that a lot of people like me who are starting to write their first things, it's a big scroll, but we start with it because it's less severe if you make a mistake.
So whiteout's not an option.
Whiteout's not an option, no, but you can actually use a knife and scrape off. Yeah, you can't cut it out, but you can scrape it till it comes out and then right over the top. Yeah, assuming it's not God's name. Yeah. So I guess that's one thing that we write. Are there any questions about the Torah scroll before I go to the next things?
What's the working life of the effective life of that parchment?
It's I would say what we see is that most parchments are good for a good 40, 50 years, assuming it's a well-made parchment and it's written with good ink, etc.
Okay.
You start to see after about 50 years, you start to notice a letter might fade, which by the way makes the whole thing not kosher until the letter's fixed. The letter can be rewritten, but if something's missing, it makes it not kosher. So often, like in synagogue, sometimes the person reading the Torah, who's reciting the Torah, they'll be reading and they'll stop suddenly. And that's because they've realized that there's a mistake. Or another thing that can happen is you'll notice, I don't know how well you can see, but we'll see closer after, none of the letters are touching, right? So that's another law, that none of the letters can touch one another. No cursive. So that's something else that, sometimes the ink can even just, yeah. So sometimes the ink can drip and it causes the two letters to touch. You've got to scrape that out and start again. So there's a lot of laws and a lot of intricacies. But yeah, back to your question. Usually after about 50 years, we'll start to see things come up. But if it's well kept and well looked after, it could last for 100, 150 years.
How long did the dead sea?
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, amazing condition. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they also had the advantage of being in a cave. So they had, but yes.
When you scrape out the mistake,
Yeah.
you then have to furnish the parchment in any way to get the.
No.
Does it rough up the parchment?
It does sometimes, as long as the parchment is kept white. So you know how sometimes if you kept scraping parchment, it would sort of turn yellow. As long as the parchment is kept white, it's okay to go.
Say some of the ink starts to fade.
Yeah.
And another scribe re-inscribe those.
Yeah.
Those letters to make it legible.
Yeah, so that's a big thing that we do. So once letters start fading and they can start turning sort of a browny color, we will then take some people bring it in and we'll write over the top of letters. No, it's a specialized, has to be a scribe. It's because you're really rewriting the letters. Yeah.
You said the ink was kind of a secret formula.
Yeah.
Is there just one formula for that, or does it vary?
I think there's a few. It's varied. I mean, over time, there's obviously Jews have lived, especially in the last 1,000 years, they've lived really all over the world, and they've had access to different sort of materials. So they've used all different things. But the main thing is that just as long as it's black and not from an animal that's not kosher, that's really all you need.
Are there any other characteristics of the ink that we would recognize as because we
Trying to
talk
think.
about whether an ink is water fast or
Yeah,
light
like
fast?
I've got ink here, that I use with the kids. Where is it? Oh, it's here. Which is just, your general black ink. Like, I don't know what you guys use, but this is,
It's probably like a calligraphy.
very quick drying Sumi ink.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we wouldn't use that for a scroll, but to practice or whatever, we could use that.
Well,
Yeah.
those are right away more permanent than what we typically use. In
Right.
fountain pen. Most fountain pen inks will bleed with water.
Right.
That won't.
Right. Yeah. So that's the Torah scroll. The other thing that you guys might be familiar with is that a lot of Jewish homes have a mezuzah, right? They have a piece of parchment on the door of the home. Generally, people have it on the front door. You're meant to have it on all doors, but a lot of people, even if they're not sort of practicing Jews, they'll put it on their front door. So right? How come?
Everyone else is straight as Jew.
Right.
So what's that? Oh, that's a Mazusi. You touch that God, God, you did.
Oh. No, well, that someone was having you on there. That's not true.
He was standing
Yeah, so I brought here some. Sorry.
All of the different texts that you write, every letter is in exactly the same place.
No, so it's not in the exact same place. There will be some discrepancies between scribes. Like some scribes might have this line here, just because their letters might be bigger or smaller, but it has to be in the same order, obviously. But some scribes will use a little bit more parchment than others. But it has to be. That's actually for Torah scrolls. For a mezuzah,
If it's another at the beginning.
yeah.
At the end,
Oh, yeah, that has to be. Yeah. Yeah, for a Megillah, for the scroll of Esther, there's different formulas. There's 10-line Megillas, and then there's 20-line Megillas. So, and then there's 21-line Megillas and 28-line Megillas. So obviously those are different.
What's
different.
Megillah?
Sorry, Megillah is a scroll of Esther, the book of Esther. Yeah, which we. Yeah. On all of them. Yeah. So here I brought something pretty cool, which is it was Australia's biggest mezuzah scroll. So this went on someone's door, right? So you can imagine, just to give you context, this is. So this is a regular sort of mezuzah scroll, right? So you can see it's pretty, right? Pretty small. So there's two passages from the Torah that we write on it. It's from the what we call the Shema, which talks about it actually talks about God being one, monotheism, and it also talks about putting a scroll on your door. So it makes sense that that's what we write inside.
Basically instructions for the book.
Exactly. Yeah, we kind of put exactly. This is another this is your bigger mezuzah that you would buy, but then this is obviously someone who's paid a lot of money. Now, I actually can't really get my head around this, how the scribe who made this would have been able to fashion a quill in a way that produced such huge letters, right? But obviously they did. Yeah. So obviously it would have been a very open cut with the quill and very large letters. Even though this is so big, right? It's the same amount of lines as this one, right? So it still has to be the same formula. It still has to have the same words going to the end of the same line. So it's cool to see. The reason I've got it is because it actually became not kosher. You can see there's a bit of mold on the back, so water seeped through, which affected some of the letters, which made it not kosher. So we actually check our mezuzah scrolls every few years. We send them into the scribe just to check, if a mezuzah is sitting in the sun or it can get rain on it, obviously the letters can be affected. So this is yeah. Oh, this one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I assume so. Actually, I need to find out. Yeah. So any questions? Yes, sorry.
The synagogue, when they're doing like their intonation and like they change their like tone.
Yeah. No, great question. So on the Torah scroll, so in modern Hebrew, just to give context, so, there's vowels. So in modern Hebrew, we have vowels, we have dots that give us sounds for each letter, because a letter could be recited in different sounds. So in the Torah, in the ancient script, there's no vowels. Not that, yeah. Yeah. So there's that. So there's none of that either. So it's passed down. Yeah. Yeah. We have books that have those notes in them, but in this scroll, we don't, right? Yeah. It's 20, well, there's 22 letters, and then there's some final letters as well. I think there's 28 letters, including the final letters. Yeah. Yeah. So that's Torah scroll. We've done mezuzah. The second last thing I want to show you, in terms of what a scribe makes is, I don't know if any of you have seen, but the Orthodox Jewish men will wear 2 boxes each morning when they pray. So they'll wear a box on their head and a box on their arm, and they'll strap it to their arm, and it will be strapped around their head. So those are what we call, well, in English, the translation, it's not really a great translation, but it's called phylacteries. Phylacteries. We call it tefillin. Inside the tefillin, 4 passages from the Torah. 2 of them are the same passages that we have in the mezuzah from the Shema, and then there's an extra 2 passages. Inside the head tefillin, there's 4 compartments. So there's 4 chambers. And in each chamber, there's 1 paragraph goes in each chamber in a special order. And that's where the role of the sofer comes in. So the sofer writes the text that goes inside that chamber. So he puts together. So that takes a few days to write. This actually, and this is something I should also tell you in terms of understanding the Jewish laws and the intricacies. So a Torah can be written in any order. You could start at the end, come back, go to the middle, go back to the start. A mezuzah and tefillin, each letter has to be written in order. So why that's important is because if you make a mistake when you're writing tefillin or mezuzah, and then you keep writing, you've made it not kosher, the whole thing, right? Whereas in a Torah, you can go back. It's not an issue. So when a person's writing this, they have to be extremely careful that if they make a mistake, they stop in their tracks, check the mistake, fix it up, and then they can keep going. But the worst thing you could do is kind of make a mistake and think, oh, it's probably all right, and then keep going. Right? Yeah.
What happens to the actual
So if the letter, if the mistake is on the letter, and the letter is still recognizable as that letter, so you've written an A, and a person can still see that it's an A, and it still has the basic format of a kosher A, you can fix it, and even if you've kept on writing. But if it doesn't, if it's unusable, let's say the letter was touching another letter, you've got to start again.
That's parchment as well.
And this is, this is all parchment. This again is all handwritten, all has to be done by the Jewish scribe. So for the head tefillin, there's 4 of these that get wrapped up individually. 1 goes into each chamber. There's a special order that they go in the chamber. Now, of course, as you know, 2 Jews equals 3 opinions, and the rabbis were very much, well, yeah, that's true. So there's actually a dispute amongst the rabbis, of course, about which order the 4 passages go in. Do they go from right to left? Do they go from left to right? So there's some people like me who wear 2 boxes of tefillin, like, so we cover our bases. So we're satisfying both, because there was one major rabbi that said it's this way, and there was another major rabbi that said it's that way. So some of us, we want to be safe. We buy 2 pairs of tefillin. We have that way and that way. So that's just something to know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you put $1.50 on each one. And then this is what goes inside the arm, the box that goes on the arm. And that is the same 4 passages that go on the head, but they're written together on one piece. Well, these, you can see here, actually, the parchment has been connected, but it's effectively one piece of parchment. That you can see the paragraph breaks, right? But it's the same 4 passages. The Shema. So it's the 3 paragraphs of the Shema. There's 3 paragraphs. And then there's 1 extra passage that they use from the Torah. It's about when we were slaves in Egypt, talking about when we were slaves in Egypt and that God, saved us and brought us out of Egypt.
From the house of
Yes, exactly. Are there any questions about the tefillin boxes? Okay. So again, this is obviously something that is also, I would say, even more important to write this properly than the mezuzah and the Torah scroll. And that's because what happens is that these get sewn up, right? The box, they get put inside the box gets sewn up, and you don't want to open your tefillin boxes very often to check it. So really, it's so important that the software writes this correctly and writes it properly. All right, the next thing I want to show, someone will check this. So let's say, someone will buy tefillin. Let's say I go to Israel, I buy some tefillin. I got a good deal. I'll then take it to a sofer like Rabbi Eli Gutnick, who's been a sofer for a long time. He'll open the tefillin and check it, make sure each letter is written correctly, and then sew it back up. Most guys, so it's probably $50, $100 to do. Most guys every 5-10 years will check their tefillin. Okay, so I have a few more things to show you. I'll show you this first. So this is just a case, but it's a beautiful case, you can see. So this is the scroll of Esther. So I'm not sure if you know, but we have a festival called Purim, right? Which some people call the Jewish Halloween. It's where we dress up. It's celebrating that when the Jews, after the destruction of the first temple, there were a lot of Jews who went to what's modern day Iran, but what was then part of the Persian Empire. The Jews went there, and there was a Jewish queen, Queen Esther, who was chosen to be the queen. There was a plot by one of the king. We call him King Ahasuerus, but I think historically it's Xerxes. He had like a prime minister, a minister, Haman, who had a plot to kill all the Jews. And Queen Esther came in at the last minute, saved the day, and she wrote down the story. And we recite that story once a year. So that story has to be written down on parchment. It's written in books, but to be recited for a congregation in synagogue, it has to be written down on parchment, again, using the quill, using the ink, the same rules that apply for the Torah. The difference is, as I said before, that it doesn't have God's name. So there's a few more leniencies that we can use if we need to. So this is the full Megillah, the full scroll. So you can see I won't be able to pull the whole thing out, but you can see here that it's 16 of these columns, right? So on each piece of parchment, this is the end, as you can see, but on each piece of parchment, there's 4 columns, and I'm writing one now. So each line takes me about 15 minutes to write. So it's a huge time effort in terms of producing it. My aim is to finish mine for next Purim, which is in February next year. So I should get there. I'm almost halfway, but it is.
So much in so few columns.
Yeah.
It's not a lot.
Yeah. So it's about 10 chapters of words into 16 columns. I think, like I said to Max before, there's different Megillahs, there's different scrolls. This is I think a 28-line scroll, right? So there's some scrolls that have 21 lines, and there's some scrolls that have 10 lines. Again, because it doesn't have God's name, we could be a bit more lax in the customs that people do. This scroll, what's interesting about this scroll is that this one actually is not, but some scrolls, the one that I'm writing, each column starts with the same word. So they've fashioned the lines in a way that each column actually starts with the word Hamelech, which is king, which is an allusion to what's, I guess, superfluously an allusion to King Ahasuerus, but what we would say is an allusion to God, the ultimate king. So that's what people do there. Do you have a question?
The white space on the end of the
Yeah.
scroll, is that deliberate and required?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be as large, but you do have to leave a bit at the end.
So it can wrap around.
Yeah. That's the end of the scroll.
I think he's asking about the white spaces in the block.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's like a paragraph space. Yeah, it's like a new chapter. Yeah.
Should be the beginning.
Sorry, you're right, because I'm holding it that way. Yes, you're right. This is the beginning. Yes. Sorry, that's a good point. Yes, so that's a good point. Yes, sorry. So it's written from right to left. So this is actually the beginning. Yeah, maybe if you can hold that, that's great. So we could pull it out a little bit. Yeah. So we leave a little bit at the start as well as at the end. So we could actually probably unwrap the whole thing. You can see here is a very interesting thing. These are the names of Haman. So the one who wanted to kill all the Jews, he had 10 sons, and his 10 sons were part of the plot. And they were also, they were actually hanged with him. He ended up being hanged by the king. And we recite the names of his 10 sons, and we write it. It's a tradition to write it in that fashion with the spacing in between.
Are all the inks that you use, are they this glossy, or is it this one just particularly?
It is usually like this. Yeah, especially when they're fresh. Yeah. So you can see this one. How many columns is this one? So this is because it's more lines. This is 10. Right. So this is a 10 column. The one I'm writing is 16. Is all different depending on the lines. Yeah, we've opened it all up. So you can see the space on the end, and you can see the space at the start as well.
So what's this?
So these are the names of the 10 sons.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You glue them like.
Yeah, so they're put together with they're actually we use like the intestines of a kosher animal to as like the well, we sew it. Yeah, it's like sewed together. Yeah. This is a pretty fresh one. So this was written a few years ago. As someone bought this, they cost about $2,000 to buy. Again, it comes down to the work that goes into it. There are also, of course, there's more expert softwares and there's more beginner softwares like me. So
You made this?
no, so someone will sell it as I made it. You don't like sign it like a piece of art, but what some people, if they're such good, even though every letter needs to be the same, if someone's a really good scribe, they sort of have a signature look that people can say, yeah, I can see he's an expert.
The plaque on the.
Yeah, that actually could be, yeah. Some people would do that, but I think usually you'd go to someone who's very knowledgeable about what's around, and yeah. Software, so SOFER.
Oh,
Yeah,
so, up there.
yeah,
The accents on. Okay.
yeah. So we're called a software STUM, which is like ST, the A is not included in the acronym, and an M. So the STUM stands for, it's an acronym for the the main things that a software writes, which is a Sefer Torah, the 5 books of Moses, a T, which is for tefillin, right? The boxes, and an M for mezuzah. So that's what we're called. There's one more thing I wanted to show you, and then we can have questions. And I've also brought some quills if anyone wants to have a go as well at writing some of the letters. I'll just put this away. So I wanted to show you this, which is very special. I got told off by the lady here for not putting it in a better container, because this is actually a 200-year-old scroll of Esther. It comes from Yemen, where Jews have lived for a long time. And you can see that it's obviously this is a much smaller scroll of Esther than this one, right? But the same thing. Obviously, you need more parchment because of or more width of the parchment, because the lines, this is only a 10-line scroll. You can see that there's holes in it. It's been, maybe an animal's got to it, or just over time there's been holes. And the parchment is very, very thick, which is probably why it's lasted so long. And I don't know how well you could see, but you could also see that the letters are sort of browny, faded. But I think, why I think it's amazing to see is that despite how old it is, you can still pretty much read this. Maybe not every single letter, but because of the instruments and the materials that we use, you can still have a good go at this. And I think it's pretty amazing just to see and also to see that the letters, the way that the letters are written, even though it's over 200 years old, is exactly the same. I don't know if anyone went to the State Library, had an exhibition called Luminous at the start of the year. So it was an exhibition on old sacred Jewish texts. And they had things there, like they had a Chinese Torah that they found in China from the 1300s, right? An ancient Jewish community in China. And yeah, the letters weren't perfect, and some of them were faded, but you could still see the same letters, which is pretty amazing.
Once the letters are faded from black,
Yeah.
it's no longer considered like a.
Yeah. So it's still considered religious text. By the way, if something does go wrong, or if just a text is too old and sort of can't be saved, we actually have to bury it in the ground like we bury a person. We don't burn them. Definitely not. Yeah. So the what we have to do is put them in the ground and really bury it like we're burying a person, because it's got that holiness.
You can bury things like that, or you can burn them and consign the ashes to flowing water.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, ours is a bit less environmentally friendly, I guess, but well, generally, yeah. So I have a little bit, but it's. Sorry, I should have said it's only when you write God's name that it has to be buried if you make a mistake. So if it's just something else, yeah. Yeah, as long as it's not like, if it's like a quote from the Torah or you're writing God's name, then it has to be buried. Yeah. Oh, this was given to Rabbi Eli Gutnick, and he's loaned it out to me to show you guys. But it was given. Someone donated it to him. Yeah.
What would be like standard mistake? I mean, when you say you write it wrong,
Oh, well, like a good. Yeah. Good example. A good example is this mezuzah, right? Where I've put a pencil line. The software simply wrote the wrong letter. Wasn't concentrating, right? It happens to the best of us, right? Whole thing's not kosher. So that's one example of a mistake. Just person wasn't concentrating. I would say the most typical mistake is 2 letters are touching, because you can see that you can't leave much of a gap between the letters, right? You've got to obviously make it look like it's one word. So things can happen where it's very hard to make sure that you're writing that doesn't exactly touch. One other thing is, because you're writing right to left as a right-hander, it's very easy the back of your hand to smudge the ink. I don't know about you guys when you're using ink, but it's the most frustrating thing when you've written something and then you smudge it after. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty quick actually. It usually takes. I find it's pretty like within half an hour. It's fully dry. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Nah.
If everything is more or less in the same place, wouldn't it be more logical to write it from left to right, working back towards the beginning of the line?
Well, it comes back to that thing that we every letter has to be written in order, and because we write from right to left, it has to be written in order. Yeah. Unless you're writing a Torah scroll, which I guess you could do, but it would be a bit. You'd sort of feel funny because you'd be writing words backwards. So as you're, yeah. That's
no photocopying,
yeah.
That's why it's blacking photocopying.
Yeah. So if there's no more, if you guys have any questions, obviously welcome to ask. I brought some quills with me. I will say that we give these to the kids, so they might be a bit bashed up, but you can look around and there might be some decent ones to use. I've also got with me, I've got like some worksheets that actually have some of the ancient Hebrew letters. So you could either, just have a look at some of the letters. So yeah, I've got ink. There's ink here. I've got these, and also you're welcome to come and have a look at these materials as well. I teach Jewish studies, so I teach. It's a mixture of Torah and Jewish philosophy and Jewish history. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, and to be literate in Hebrew. Yeah.
Explain the little things on top of the letters.
Oh yes, great point. So I'll show you on this one because it's probably nicest here. So if you can see here, so this is the letter Shin, right? And this letter has a crown on it. It has 3 of them. It's not required by law that we have to put these crowns on the letters, but it's a tradition that we've been doing for a long time. And it's really to beautify the letters, it looks nicer. And to give sort of the letters an extra element of holiness. So certain letters you could see we'll have these special crowns. It's also go into the letter on how to write the crowns. They also into the next line. So it's also an element when they write the letter itself. Other people, different people have different preferences. So you can use those pens that are extremely thin. Yeah, they're just like special pens, but they're like dot size. You can fine liners, yeah. So you can use those for the crowns. Yeah. But you have to put kosher ink in the thing. So yeah.
They teach you how to make quill. You know how to.
Yeah. So you learn how to cut a quill, how to sharpen it. Yeah.
Like, how long will a quill last?
They're pretty good. They last. I mean, you have to be careful with it, obviously. But I used when I was in Israel, the software gave me a quill to use, and it lasted the whole year. So they're pretty good. Yeah.
Enough of, I mean, it's a full division, obviously, but there's still enough of people who do it.
Yeah, great question. Yeah. So in Australia, or in Melbourne, I should say, we have obviously the main software. That's his full-time job. He sits in an office all day, either writing or checking, and people come to him and bring all their stuff, or they come to him and request things to buy. That's his full-time job. And then you have probably 3 or 4 guys like me who will write different things. Like some guys will write mezuzahs for Ellie. Some guys like me will be writing a scroll of Esther. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the materials comes from Israel pretty much. It's just easier. They've got factories there, and they've got obviously more people that are interested in this stuff and making it.
It's all clear. It's all clear.
It's It's all you get some funny looks from customs when you try. Oh yeah, exactly. Right, there you go. Yeah. So I smuggled these back in from Israel, but don't tell anyone. Yeah. I'll be on Channel 7, right? That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Has there not been any, I guess, demand to make these raw materials in other places?
They have in America, where there's a bigger Jewish community. I'm sure they make, but in Australia, we have such a small community. In Melbourne, there's about 60,000 Jews. 60,000, yeah. In Sydney, there's about 50,000, I think. But to be honest, there's probably more. There's people that don't say that they're Jewish. But yeah, from what we know, there's about 60,000. Yeah.
Number I've got in my head is about 30,000.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to have a go at writing, I'll pass around some sheets. I'll pass around some quills, and you're welcome to come up and look as well.
You just dip it in this, or you have a special
Yeah.
container.
Yeah. So I think you could just use these and just open these. Just be careful because it does spill. I don't know.
We know that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I'll put that here. Yeah, of course.
Is there a specific wood that's used?
For this? Or no, I don't think so. I think it can be any
You said swans on kosher?
swans. It's true. Do they eat prey, swans? No. I'm not sure. I've never heard that a swan's kosher, but the shamus. So the shamus is all the things that have to be buried. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah,
So what's
Thank you.
population of Australia?
I think it's 110,000 last time I checked. Yeah. I do a lot of workshops with them. Yeah. So I've done some classes like before Purim, I did a class with them and yeah. Yeah, it is beautiful. Yeah. I'll these are look, some of them are I can see like that one's not going to be any good. Yeah, I'm not these are
Looks like a turkey,
yeah, I think it's a turkey.
but a very small one.
Yeah.
And
They have some of them have been a bit bashed up, but
now with the tip, do you are they all cut square? That is the tip always square like that,
yeah.
or do you have to do like an oblique tip on one side?
No, it's always it's
Always
square like
square.
that. Yeah.
Do you put a slot in?
Yes.
How,
Yeah.
how long? On this one, how long would that be?
The best one to show you is the one he's got, actually. Sorry, I'll get the. You could welcome to pass these around. There's some more ink here as well. If you want to take some ink.
Oh, no.
Yeah. See, if you have a look at this one, so this is a beautiful old turkey feather.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
can
nice-
see maybe the slot
Nice,
there.
nice strong barrel.
Yeah.
And you don't always strip off half the bar.
Nah, they can leave it. Yeah.
Oh, right, because traditionally in English words, they're all cut off
Right.
and it's cut off to about there.
Right. Yeah, I think just to beautify the sort of
Yeah, when
they keep
when
it on.
you See them in the film, right?
Yeah.
It's actually
It's
actually bright.
yeah.
Day to day,
Yeah.
cut them off.
To be honest, yeah. When I'm using like if I'm using one properly, I'd
Oh, you do. So
yeah. It's not you don't have to.
In English, they used to have a special quill cutter, like, you put
Yes.
it inside.
Yeah.
it's like toenail.
Oh yeah, they have it. I didn't know you can get one of those.
Yeah, I've got one.
Oh,
Horribly expensive.
how much are they?
$700.
Right.
It's
So what sort of knife do you use?
So they use like it's just like a
special knife it is for that? or-
it's just like a
Blade like that?
it's just exactly like that. Yeah, it's a blade like that. You guys are prepared here. I tell you what. Yeah, yeah,
well,
exactly like that.
Yeah.
They chop it. They just cut it.
We're fanatics.
Yeah.
We're the Hezbollah of
But yeah, that's what this is for cutting the quills and.
Sorry, there's more ink as well if anyone wants. Yeah, I've got more here as well. I'll pass it around. Thank you. I've also got some more sheets. Did everyone get a sheet?
You had children.
Yes.
What do you for children?
So
Okay, so they
so
have to pick
my
it up.
son is trying to get to my passion. He's a 2-year-old. So I have to, yeah, I have to, yeah, I have to lock. I have a desk that closes. Otherwise,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Makes sense.
I'll just get these guys set up.
You got any more of them?
Yeah, feel free as well to use your own if you want to try your own pens and the kind of thing. Yeah.
This one goes into the film, is it?
Yeah, that's right. So it goes the other way. It's the other way. The text is that way.
You don't expect to.
No, I'm just,
Deutschkopf like.
One can write your,
Now, are these
and like,
yeah.
these little lines here, they're part of the letter, they're not diacritical marks.
Yeah. So they're those crowns that we were talking about.
Oh, they're the crown.
Yeah, they're the crowns. Yeah.
I see.
is this the crowns? Like-
Yeah, that's the crowns. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
which way, I know you write from right to left, but how do you actually write? Do you write that way?
No, you write like that.
I know that, but when you move the quill, do you write?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So you start on the left side and move that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
With each letter, you start on
Yeah.
the left side and do to the right,
Yeah.
and then move to the left up to the next letter.
Yeah,
and then
exactly. So actually something to share, just in terms, you guys are the fanatics, I know. So when we start with a quill, we always have what's called like a starting line. So you make a little line and then use that line to then make your block. Because all the letters you can see are used, they've all got square lines or rectangle lines, right?
yeah.
So you always start. So you'd start like if you don't mind, just so you want to start. You make a start like that,
Ah,
and then you go for your line.
like a serif.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What? You Ashkenazi, or you look like
Ashkenazi,
you
yeah.
look like it, you.
Well, I've got a bit of Sephardi
I was
blood.
going to
But
say in the light you look a lot more Sephardi,
yeah,
but certainly not a Yemeni.
no, not a Yemenite. My grandmother was born in Iraq. That's
Yeah, yeah.
my Sephardi blood.
Yeah,
But
well,
the rest were from Poland and Germany.
they did stay there a long time.
Yeah, they did.
Since what, AD 600?
Yeah, they had a
600 BC.
they had a good run.
Yeah.
What letters?
That's a hay.
That one.
That's a chet.
That's a chet?
Yeah, it's an ancient. So you use a vav and a zayin to make chet. Yeah, yeah,
Very cool.
yeah.
Look, I know
Yeah,
you're not supposed to shape.
The kids got to that one. I think you can fix it for us.
It's a bit tall.